What time is it? Fight!
Welcome to the MMA Podcast.
Check this out.
Get on the latest news, interviews, and stars of the MMA world. Hosted by yours, John Boy McElroy. So tune in, everyone, right here to the MMA Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Martial Arts Chat podcast. I'm your host, John Boy McElroy, here with you on today's show, and thank you so much for listening and tuning in on Spreaker.com. You can also catch us at our website, which is www.marschchat.wordpress.com. Like us on facebook.com/martial arts chat, and of course on Twitter, which is also at Martial Arts Chat. Today's show is another MMA Roundtable special where the panel will be breaking down UFC Fight Night Japan, Barnett versus Nelson, and discussing the retirements of both Tito Ortiz and Rich Franklin, as well as looking ahead to the UFC 192 card, Cormier versus Gustafsson in Texas. I'm joined on today's show by Bob Carson of the Carson's Corner podcast, and a regular and a lifesaver for today's Adri Kumara. Thanks very much for joining us, gentlemen, here on Martial Arts Chat.
Thank you.
We'll get right into it then. Starting with the Bellator Dynamite show. T. Ortiz loses via inverted triangle to Liam McGeary, and another post-fight retirement speech. I guess really it's not really a surprise. It seems to be a common theme for the Huntington Beach bad boy. The fight itself, perhaps a bit forgettable, but Adri, I'll start with you on this one. T. Ortiz, I don't think any of us truly believed he was on a win streak or even back to the UFC or become world champion again, but is T. Ortiz someone, Adri, you want to still see compete at 40 years old, and does he have anything left to offer?
Well, he was already irrelevant for a couple of years now. Nobody took him for. Everybody's taking him for granted for the last couple of years, and the last time people respect him was his victory over Ryan Bader, which was 4 years ago, and then after another 3-fight losing streak to Rashad, to Big Knock, and to Forrest Griffin. So yeah, was the loss surprising? No. Was the retirement speech surprising? Definitely no. And I think it's time. For him to hang the gloves. One of the pioneer. He's one of the first superstar in MMA. He's one of the first superstar, and I think people should respect him more because of that. I mean, the battles with Ken Shamrock was one of the best legendary matches that he went through. That he needs more respect for what he did in the industry, what he did for the sport. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Tito Ortiz, and I think it's a perfect time for him to hang the gloves. And it's not really a big loss against Liam McGeary. Liam McGeary has been on a roll lately, and it's not something for him to be ashamed of to end his career with the loss.
No, I think you're right. It's best to remember for what he did, and like you said, especially the earlier in his career. Anything just now, especially with losses, maybe they're not the most damaging losses given his record. Yeah, you're right. I'm looking at his record just now, especially the UFC. That Ryan Bader win, and that was it really for the last few hours. So yeah, but Bob, I'd like to get your thoughts on Ortiz. I guess his thing recently has been a bit cringy, but is he still someone you want to see competing, or are you happy about this retirement call?
No, I'm happy. I just you got to respect Tito's longevity in the sport. There's no question that Tito really was a draw, and you can make an argument that Tito was really the first real brash personality in the old era of the UFC. Yeah. He was an intimidating fighter. He was, his trunks and his hair color and his fighting style was really, really unique, and it's amazing that he's been able to last in the sport for so long. But as Audrey was saying, I think that at this point, he really has nothing left to offer in the sport. It's almost like, in a sense, he was passing the torch off to a guy in Liam McGarry, who's a lot younger and is an up-and-coming fighter, an undefeated fighter in Bellator. Whether or not Tito will stay retired, who knows? Do we think that we were going to be calling Ken Shamrock fights at the age of 52? But it's going to be interesting to see. But we have to respect what Tito has done in the sport, and he's a dedicated family man, supposedly, according to his own words. And he wants to contribute to the sport in other ways by training fighters and by helping people with mixed martial arts. And so this is the right time for him, the right decision, and we'll see what happens in the future.
I like that idea of giving back. That's a good point, actually. And perhaps this is the stage in his career, like you said, where he's off in the sunset from his active cage fighting days, and teaching new fighters and that kind of thing, and passing the torch. That's a better way to probably put it. But another retirement speech, guys, that broke this week was that of Rich Franklin. I guess another pioneer, you could say, the sport, especially during those mid-noughties. Mr. Carson, I'll come to you in this one. Rich Franklin, his last fight against Kung Lee, but your thoughts in general, just of Ace and his career.
I think Rich Franklin was just a great champion, and he really represented himself well outside the cage as well. I thought he's a smart guy, and I think maybe at this point in his career, maybe obviously going back to 2012 when he lost to Kung Lee, he had this huge hiatus afterwards. I don't think anybody's really surprised by this announcement, but I think Rich Franklin is a very, very smart guy. He's a very, very highly educated person, and he can contribute to the sport outside of fighting. There was, his affiliation, or I don't want to say affiliation, but he with one of the UFC organizations UFC affiliated organizations overseas. Rich Franklin was sort of taking the reins over there, and he can contribute. Of course, his fights with Vanderlei Silva, his fights with Chuck Liddell come to mind, and that really, I think, those fights and the fighting style and his knockout power and his class as an individual really define him as a legend in the sport.
And a school teacher, nonetheless, we should never forget.
Yeah, exactly.
Audrey, what about yourself? I guess it may be not have rather been a surprise given the 3-year layoff, but are you sad to see Rich Franklin go?
Not really. I mean, we saw it coming. Everybody saw it coming. Sooner or later, he's going to announce the retirement. But especially here in Asia, like Bob said, he's been working with one championship, which has nothing to do with the UFC actually. He's one of the VP of the company, along with Matt Hume, the legendary Matt Hume, and he's been doing great things here in Asia. He's been a great ambassador of the sport. He's been touring not unknown countries. I mean, like countries that are almost as zero MMA, and he's been a very great MMA ambassador to those countries. I saw he was in Myanmar for a couple of months ago to promote one championship show over there. Right. He was in the Philippines along with Brendan Vera. So he's been a very great ambassador of the sport, and what I saw in his retirement post was that he's going to continue to be one of the VP of one championship, and I'm looking forward to see what he does, because now he doesn't have any more burden of competing. So I'm looking forward to big things that he's going to do for the sport.
Absolutely. I mean, we wish them all the best for the future. Well, guys, let's move on to UFC Fight Night Japan. Just a few random selections this week. We had Diego Brandao finishing Kikono around about the 30-second mark. The Japanese fighter has a lot of experience. He has over 30 fights. But this style and this stance that he employs, it really doesn't do him any favours, head straight up. We've seen him knocked out quite bad in his last few fights. Tony Ferguson knockout comes to mind as well. Adri, I'll start with you in this one. Diego Brandao, gets a nice finish, but as for Kokono, where do you see him going from here, given this another KO?
Yeah, I think he gotta have one more fight at least for us to predict what his fate gonna be. He got 2 straight losses now against two tough opponents in Kevin Souza and Diego Brandao. Yep. But also don't forget that he did very well against Quinn Mullen back in Singapore, which was a year ago.
That's right.
And he choked out one of the most potential prospect that came out of the Ultimate Fighter, which was Sam Sicilia. I still remember seeing Sam Sicilia knocking the guy out in the same fashion as Diego Brandao when he knocked out Kikuno back when Sam Sicilia was still in the Ultimate Fighter. So I think we need to see one more fight from Kikuno and we have to judge from that fight whether he still belongs in the UFC or not. I'm not gonna try to break down his style or something. It's something different. I'm just gonna say it's something different, but it seems to be working for him at first. I don't know what's been happening lately. I think people have started to figure out what to do against his strange method, strange approach to MMA. I think he got to change his game a little bit, because I think when he first came out on the scene, people were like, "Whoa, what's this guy doing? What is this?
What is this guy doing?" It's exactly what I thought. What is this guy?
But now people have started to figure out what to do when he fights.
Yeah, it definitely calls for a change, or something's got to give. Bob, what's your thoughts on Kikuno? Is it one more fight, one last chance?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's done by any means. He, this is his second loss in a row, but he's an exciting fighter who most of his wins, or a good percentage of his wins, are knockouts, TKOs, which suggests that people would want to see him. We know that the UFC prefers to have exciting fights, striking in their fights, and so a fighter like this, I think, will have a place in the UFC unless they lose a lot more fights consecutively and more perhaps decisively. So I think that there's still a future in the UFC for him.
And as for Brandao, a nice victory for him. Where would you see him like to see him fight next at featherweight?
It's tough to say. I mean, I think that he's got to have a couple more wins before he could start to go after some of the top fighters there. He was on a roll for a little while, winning 3 in a row, and then his loss to Dustin Poirier. This was about almost 2 years ago now, and then following that, Conor McGregor, who, as we know, is considered one of the top. Now he's the interim champion. Yeah. He's going to be fighting Jose Aldo. I don't think he's really in a position to challenge some of the top guys in that division. But 1 or 2 more fights, 3 more fights, whatever, beating the right person, taking a fight on short notice, winning that fight decisively, could change the picture very quickly for Diego Brandao. You got to respect him. He's a real tough fighter, and he's had some good wins. He beat a guy, Dennis Bermudez, a while ago. He's fought the top guys, and you just never know. Sometimes, a new training partner, a new coach, different atmosphere. Anything can happen in the sport of mixed martial arts that could propel someone like Diego Brandao to the next level, or toward closer to the top.
Absolutely. Well, moving on to Uriah Hall, and man, I don't know about you guys, but I've been waiting to see this for a while. Well, let's start off. He gets taken down the first round. He offers some decent submission attempts off his back. Adri will probably correct me on that.